how mindset matters. Mindset can blow your mind where everything looks fabulous, beautiful around on the exterior part of you. People think that you're nailing it. People believe that you are like in alignment. They go, "Oh my gosh, I just want to be like that person." And you're going and you're doing all these travel trips and you're winning all this stuff because you are like the number one salesperson and everything just looks fabulous on the outside. Now, the issue is that just because it looks good on the outside does not mean that deep inside the person that's leading and looking like they're having this adventure that you really don't know what's happening on the inside. You really don't realize that this person could be driven by something that is not making them feel so good. This is why I invited Elizabeth Gueldner is I have this conversation because we've been on this series, this trajectory of mindset matters. Her and I start talking about how she was trying to find like her realignment because in the past she's always been very successful, but something has driven her in a way of creating all this material things happening, but inside, deep inside, she knew that there was something that was not in alignment. It was just not in alignment. She didn't feel good. We're going to get into that. But when I first met her, she was discovering a new way of living life. And I tell you, like probably calming her nervous system, finding how to be in that relaxed mode and still kicking butt, but doing it in a new way so that she feels like she's in a healing space instead of going in vicious circles. So we'll talk about that in the way that she wants to explain it. Welcome in, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me, Rhonda. I always love doing interviews with you. Thank you.
Oh, I love doing interviews too. I'm just doing a little quick check here, making sure that we're on live. Okay, so we are in. What it is that I want to Elizabeth. I'm going to do an introduction, and we're just going to do a moment here, like just for a second, so that I can do something to make sure that Elizabeth is taken care of because she has a few people that want to be on live with us and just making sure that they see it there. So, Elizabeth, I'm going to do something real quick for you so
Okay.
that you have this link because I know that you have people wanting to watch, but I don't see a big group happening out there yet. So I want to make sure that I get you this link. Um, Elizabeth, while I'm giving you this link, what I want to do, and I know it's starting off clunky, but we'll smooth it out in just a moment here. This is how live rolls sometimes, which is divine.
That's right. Real
Can
life.
you share with the beginning of what I was sharing? My question for you is what was happening for you when you were doing these trips and on the exterior? It did look like there was, like that you were nailing it. But what were you working with to motivate you? Can we go there and just kind of share your story a bit?
Sure. So my first career I was really, really young, and I started out where I was basically a waitress, all this stuff, and then a friend of mine invited me into this insurance position, right? And I had already moved out of my house because a lot of this goes back to childhood, and I know we'll get to that in just a little bit. But basically, I always heard those voices in my head that I'm not good enough and I'm not smart enough. So when I went to interview for this first position, I decided to go back and share with my mom and dad, even though I didn't live at home and I was only 19 years old. And my dad said, "No, you will absolutely not go into sales. You're not going to go into insurance. No, you're going to finish college." So I went back and turned down the job, and he asked me why. So being this young woman that I was, I shared with him what my dad said. And but then all of a sudden I heard these words in my head saying, "You're not good enough, you're not smart enough." He said, "Well, you're going to sit out this semester anyway. Why not try it?" And so I kept hearing that and I said, "Yes, I'll try it." So fast forward, what I didn't know was the boss that hired me was going to end up being the same as my childhood experience with my father. which was very micromanaging. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You should be seen and not heard, and all the things I heard. So here I am feeling all this negativity and mental abuse, basically. But as I was hearing that, I just worked harder and harder. And I didn't put any of this together as a young person. All I knew what drove me is the more you came at me, the more successful I was. Hence winning the trips and all the things I won in that first career. So it continued in that trajectory is what I saw was happening in my personal life and my business life were almost parallel. I was making the same kind of decisions in my personal life as I was making in my business life, choosing all the wrong people for me. My picker was truly broken, but I didn't understand why. I just knew that I was fueled by all these words and voices, and I just really didn't understand it at the time.
Okay, so I'm going to take over here and I'm just going to give some more insight and then we'll get it more smooth. Elizabeth, if you will go to your email, there's a direct link there for your community that will give them actually how to get to the live feed on YouTube.
To my text or
Okay.
my email?
Email. Okay, so this is where I want to go with this is that Elizabeth is in a space. And the reason why I want to kind of break this down is are you in a space where you're not making the money that you want or that you're just driven and you know that it's exhausting you and it just feels like the alignment is not there? There's just something that's not happening.
Are you meaning when I was younger or now?
Oh, I'm adding some here. So, and you can tell me if I'm not right, but because maybe I'm not right, Elizabeth. But I want you to think about this Fresh Talks Global Vision. The community that's out there watching is if there's something that's not in alignment, but you are working your butt off and you feel like I need a change. I need to understand how I can get my realignment to where I feel healthy inside. I'm doing the right choices and I can get back to, making the money or finding your way to make the money so that you are living the life that you want to, but you're also healing your body in a way that you're not carrying a lot of stress. So what Elizabeth, I'm going to get to a question for you, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth was sharing that her boss that hired her in insurance, he said, "Come on over, start working here because you're gonna not be going to school anyway." And so Elizabeth, this is the question for you: what was happening, like just in what took over when you went over to the insurance place, and all of a sudden you're kind of looking at this man that's like your dad? What was happening that was driving you? Can we go into more of that? And then I have a question right after that, just kind of holding that space a little bit more.
So that was the first career because the same thing happened in a second career. I ended up with another boss very just like that boss. So what was happening for me is I felt like getting eaten up inside. Like I knew there's something wrong and I knew that this kind of treatment was not healthy, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't break the change because I was living in fear. I was living in a lot of fear of thinking I couldn't do anything else and I'm not smart enough and not good enough. So as I was so successful and led the whole entire company internationally, inside I was not fulfilled. It was just something missing so big in my life.
And this is like a new conversation, like you haven't really exposed this part of you. Is that right? This is kind of like your first time really getting out there and being interviewed on this and being asked those questions.
Yes, yeah, and, I mean, I've
How do
shared
you
a
feel?
little bit, not like in an interview format, and I wanna be 100% with my feelings because I really feel where I've come from all my life and where I am now could really help,
Yeah.
others out there. That's my whole desire.
And I feel that when you get to speak your journey, so I'm just taking a step back, just kind of taking a breather here, seeing where we want to open this up. When you get to talk about this, it gives you the vocals to be able to explain your journey. And sometimes when we start doing that, there's things that can happen where we may believe that, we're talking bad about others, which you haven't said yet, but also that I want to get to when, since this is a new conversation for you, but it's all good stuff, when you started realizing, here, wait, I need to make that change. So, what was happening? Were you getting sick? Was something happening? Because what I hear right now is that, okay, I'm with somebody that kind of reminds me of my dad. All my life, I've gotten triggered. So, I'm with this kind of thing that kind of is pushing me. And so, I'm being driven in a way that is making me feel like I'm just speaking directly to my dad. And that in itself is like, okay, I'm going to prove myself and I'm going to get out there. So you were like top salesperson, all these things were happening. When did you said, here, the money is not what I'm after here. It's that there's something missing. Can we go right there? And you discovered that?
Well, so when that career ended and I had to reinvent myself again and figure out where I was going next in life, I still didn't solve problem issue number that was inside of me, right? So I move on to next career and the same thing happens, micromanaging boss, the whole thing. Didn't think I was educated enough for the job, all the bad voices, the fears. So again, I proved him wrong, my dad wrong, the whole thing. It wasn't until I was there 14 years, a second career. Um, even longer the first career. It wasn't, and I couldn't leave. And it was so toxic. I mean, it was awful. And I was so scared of my own self, my own belief system that were rolling around in my head that it was he did everything of his power the last 6 months to get me to quit. And I didn't because I had such a clientele until one day he said it's not working for either one of us. So basically I got fired. It wasn't until and it wasn't that day because now I'm fired, right? And I have to go on my own and all those voices are telling me, "You what are you going to do? Who's going to hire you now? Where are you going to go? You've reinvented yourself like 4 times." So, it wasn't until honestly, there's my Lily. It wasn't until I had no choice but to hear those voices in my head when I got quiet and I literally started to hear what I was saying to myself and how toxic it was making me and my environment, the energy I was projecting. It wasn't until that moment that I started to realize where are these thoughts coming from? I mean, where do they come from? I mean, are they me or who do they come from? And that's when the growth and the healing began.
Okay, I love this. You know what is really kind of interesting here? Not really, kind of. That's kind of like a dichotomy. This is like infectiously good. So you're leading the company with all these sales. You have this person that's breaking you down. And come on, audience. I know that you've been there. I know that there's things that you have done in your life. So the next question I want to have Elizabeth layer in this. But have you ever been, the audience, have you ever been in a situation where you're just nailing it, but you were raised around saying, oh, you're not very smart? And those when you bring them together, there's no way those can match because why could you be such a superstar and then from here, like almost like the boxing gloves, and then from here you are tearing yourself down. So what you're seeing and what you're feeling, they're not blending. So
Right.
it took for somebody to let you go and for you to really get quiet to start acknowledging how smart and how you were nailing it, but is this the wrong situation? So my question for you is, how did it feel when you start getting quiet and you started acknowledging what your brain was saying to what truly was happening, like that sabotage that was happening?
How did it feel?
How did it feel? Like, what did you hear? Like, yeah, I mean, this is a breakthrough probably for many people to be watching this.
It felt, at first, it felt disgusting. It felt sad and it felt sickening that how in the world could I have lived this whole entire life fighting like this woman fighting for what she believed in and the goodness of everyone for myself and for everyone, my clients. But yet I really didn't believe that about myself. I didn't know why I didn't believe that about myself. So, I mean, it is emotional because just the fact that I didn't know who I was, and I really thought that I deserved all that because based on the belief systems that had manifested from my childhood, no blame at all. It is what it is. And those words happened to me long ago. And when I started to realize that, and that light bulb moment went off for me, because I had gone to so many trainings and coaches and therapy and all this stuff, and the light bulb moment had not gone off for me yet. But
Uh-huh.
it wasn't until I literally heard how I talked to myself. And I thought, I need to, and I started thinking about the books I read. I read a lot of mindset books, the training I had, or the coaching. And I started to think, what if I started saying, I am good enough? I am smart enough. I am pretty enough. I am turning it around and stopping and use whatever signal I could use when I started to hear myself saying something out loud or to myself. Because if I'm saying it to myself or projecting it to other people, I started to think about the energy I was putting out into the world. And I thought, who wants that? I'm that girl that wants to tell you all my awful things that have happened in my life. And we're at a party and I'm telling you all about that and that. And I'm thinking, who wants to hear all that? And now I think about it now when I listen to people that they want to one up the story, right? You told your story. Okay, let me tell you mine next. Let me tell you my side. And I think to myself, thank God. I mean, it's a longer process than what I'm saying here, but
Yeah.
really never thought I would be able to get out of where I was. The fear was so great for me.
Okay, so I love this because I want to parallel here so our audience can really feel this for them. Get your journal, get your pen. Seriously, like this is where the big pivot is, and this is why I wanted to talk to Elizabeth. Now, many of us have had this happen. Raise your hand because I mean this is crazy. So I know that I'm going to tell you a story about me, and I'm going to bring it back to Elizabeth here so that we can see this. Because I want everybody here to start thinking about why you're stopping yourself. I mean, we're talking about mindset matters and why are you not where you want to be? Why are you not hitting your goals? And if you are, then there's a reason why you're here. Why are you not happy while you're hitting your goals? So I'm gonna open that up. So when I was growing up, same kind of thing of you're not smart, you're not pretty, those kinds of things. And it was a cycle. Elizabeth was talking about her space. Now find where you were when you realized or you're realizing that this is aha that something is happening that comes from an imprint, something that happened when you were younger. Now start looking at what you're doing and what the breakthrough is that you want and where the mindset has been for you. We want to blend those two. And I'm going to have Elizabeth talk about how she blended her books and all of her training and how that really was the next step of becoming aware that she had in her brain all this good work that she's been doing, but she was never able, almost like a 1 + 1 = 2. Like she was missing both those parts to blend to make it super powerful too, instead of it being, oh, I'm learning all this stuff. I'm feeling good while I'm learning all this stuff. And then when you leave whatever you're learning, the book or the event that you're going to, you're on your own with your mind. And your mind all of a sudden tears all that stuff down because of what Elizabeth just said right now. So I remember that I could hear myself say these words also in my brain. And I started crying. Elizabeth was sharing how her body, like how she felt just terrible. And talking about that it took longer than what she could even express here, of like finally reconciling that. So if you got that hold in your picture right there, take a deep breath in and let's get to that next question. Because this is where I see that this is where we get to do whatever we want in life, we can actually manifest it and get what Elizabeth actually is doing right now. And what she did before is, bringing that income in and learning not to work in the negativity, but learning something new. So, Elizabeth, when you were recognizing, here, wait, I have all this good stuff that I've been going to, but I've been going to parties or talking to my friends, and I've been saying all these things. What happened to to blend those 2 together, and I want your personal story, not just that you were with a coach or with somebody, but, like, when did you start acknowledging that the information was right there for you, but your mindset matters, your mind was in the way, and you finally were there to be for yourself?
Well, I think it's important to add, you mentioned earlier, did it cause any sickness or anything like that? What I didn't realize because I never stopped long enough is it really had caused a lot of things. I had a major eating disorder. I think that's important to the audience to hear because
Yep.
it may look like nothing came of all that working so hard under that stress, but I had a lot of things happen outside of all of that. So I just wanted to add that. That's just one part of it. But when I started to think about what I was saying, I realized one super great book called The Power of the Subconscious Mind. I realized I was feeding myself all that information. The subconscious mind hears everything I say to myself or I say about somebody else. The subconscious mind didn't know if I were talking to me or somebody else. So as I'm saying these negative thoughts to myself, the subconscious mind is recording them and I'm living them. It's like when you hear somebody say over and over, "I'm broke." Well, guess what? They're probably broke, right? Um, so when I started to retrain my mind to feel that those stories and those words were not mine. I wasn't born that way. I wasn't born imperfect and not born into this world not good enough or smart enough. When I started to realize those were other belief systems that I picked up along the way, I started to have hope. I mean, I never felt that feeling of hope that maybe there's a chance that I'll stop talking that way about myself and feeding that into the world and putting that energy out there. I literally had hope. And I'm not going to say it happened overnight, but the light bulb moment of realization did happen very quickly from all the training and all the things I did. But it was because I finally could hear. I finally got quiet enough. I kept myself so busy with working or people or doing stuff that I really didn't slow down enough to really hear. And once I did, and I started melding together the fact that this is not my stuff. Yes, I've done all these things. I've made a lot of mistakes. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of things happen in my life, like we all have. But I look and I get in touch with all of it and realize why I was acting out like that, why I was making those decisions. I wanted to be seen and heard. So once I started to put that together, I really started to find hope. And that's when the journey began of really wanting to make a difference in my life and the world around me. I no longer wanted to put that kind of negative energy into the world.
I love how you're starting to go more into that spiritual space too. Like you're saying, okay, so I've been saying these things in my subconscious doesn't even know if I'm talking about myself or talking about somebody else. Because, like if you're talking about somebody else, you're doing it to yourself. So it just feels normal to do it. And you're bringing the people around that want to talk about it. And that's the stuff that you're like, oh, I was talking to those people that were really enjoying it. And where I want to go with this is when you started recognizing this, you started moving forward. I know that you are reconnecting with yourself and how you can be successful but successful in the way of emotionally and spiritually, you're starting to become very successful. But you know that you are also knowing how to be connected with money. So, how'd you bring that money connection back into your life when you were in the negativity and driven and your nervous system just like frazzled and like that scared factor just got you going to where you are now? How are you connecting those?
One of the things I did, and I learned this with, all the tools that were starting to finally surface somewhere that we all have tools, but sometimes we don't even remember them. I did this timeline of my life and from as far as I can remember. And I found myself putting everything negative on the timeline. And then I reread that and I thought, no, wait, I want to see what the common denominator is on my timeline of my success. And when I looked at my timeline of my success common denominators in my first career and second career, just using business for a minute because we brought up money, I realized the common denominator was me. They joined me and but trusted me in the insurance. I mean, it was amazing what I sold. I sold long-term care to senior citizens, and I was in my 20s and 30s. And these people trusted me that they were maybe going to use it one day. And back then, they thought their kids would take care of them. But it was me. And when I developed the whole Pilates at the country club, they could have gone and done it anywhere. But it was I was the common denominator of who they were coming to see. And when I finally saw that, I started to step back and realize it wasn't because the abuse. I mean, at the time it was, but all these people wanted to see me. And I think that that's so important for the world because we all have so much to give back and so much to offer, but we don't see it. I didn't see it until I really put it down and saw that people want to just see me, the real me, not the hard work and driving working that's living in fear all the time because she doesn't know when the shoe's going to drop. She doesn't know when she's going to get in trouble again at work or another comment's going to be made. I mean, I lived my whole life with the shoe. When's the shoe going to drop? Literally. So when I finally realized, wow, if I just can be myself and realize the shoe's not going to drop, that's old patterning, that's old conditioning. That's when I started to meld the financial with the mental, the spiritual, the words. I finally started to realize that I was the common denominator that people stayed for and wanted to learn from or hear from, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's like putting that mask on and believe that you're just trying to match everybody else to make sure people like you because you're trying to project like
Yeah.
what you think that they want to hear from you. And then you start, what I'm hearing is that you start having the empathy and the love for yourself because you're discovering that, oh, people really want to be with me. Like I'm the person that they want to. And then you're starting to like want to be with, but you're also starting to learn how to clean up your vocabulary of like what you used to talk about to what you talk about now. And I love that you're so infectiously just a lovely person. And so how is it with relationships now? You're learning to connect with people differently. And the reason why I want to ask this, because I want to finish with this, I think this is very important. You have friends before that you were talking like this, realizing it wasn't the right space. You come to the spiritual journey, starting to really see your alignment. And now you're discovering that you love who you are and you can be you. And people want to hear that. What's the learning curve in that when you start realizing I have this small of friends relative to maybe this many that I really want to connect with because now I'm like reestablishing, restarting. And maybe you didn't start with a small group of friends again and start exploring, but how does that look like when you start really loving yourself, empathy, and being in truth with who you want to hang out with?
Well, I used to think it was really a bad thing to say I love myself or I like myself. I used to really think, it was really difficult for me to say that. First of all, coming into that space was huge for me. And when I left San Antonio and came to Austin, which is many years ago, I released several friends at that time because I knew there was a lot of negativity around it. So going into the next career at the country club, I isolated myself, not isolated, it's not the right word, but a lot of my clients and people like that became more of my friends, the people I spent time with. But as I've gone through the journey over the years and the healing, and the friends have gotten less, I'll be honest, and the friends have gotten more real. My relationships are so much more real because I realized I was contributing to that negative energy. And that's not healthy or good for anybody. So when you find yourself, that's all the relationships are is negative feeding negative, you do lose relationships. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because we change and evolve. We're always changing and evolving every year, all the time, every day. And I found at first it was a little bit lonely, but what I have evolved into is really trusting the process of being being the true authentic woman that I am meant to be and sharing that with people that really are the same. And it's so much more fulfilling to be around with people that like themselves and love themselves and want to talk about uplifting conversations and not poor pitiful me. If it's a smaller group, that's fine with me because I really would rather have all the authenticity than negativity.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that safety feeling too. I think of it as freedom, safety, and healing. And if we have that, then we just get to be ourselves and it's more fulfilling instead of having to, watch your back. Like, oh my gosh, I said something and somebody's probably rolling their eyes, but at some point you don't even care about that. But I think it's the learning curve of the transition, the clunkiness. So I love that transition. And I love what you're talking about. Thank you for sharing your story. And we can do this again. We had a little bit of clunkiness happen today, but that's what happens when you do a live show. You just keep it together. It's the same thing about being successful out there. And Kathy, I love how you are saying true that Elizabeth, she really is a wonderful woman. Now, I don't know Elizabeth. It's not like she's at my next door and I'm like going and saying, let's go have some tea. But when I've been in this virtual industry for like 15 years, when I first started as an entrepreneur, I was doing videos and I was just like crazy doing media, writing books, and I was just like, doing these things. But I had to go through transformation to really understand how I was displaying myself, and so my business didn't really grow. And when it started growing was when I started opening up and really being vulnerable. And Kathy, I don't think many people would say that they really liked me at first. What I cared about is something so different than what Elizabeth is talking about. And these breakthroughs are so vulnerable with the people in your life. You sometimes really, really want them to accept you. And sometimes you have to move on. And the people that accept you, you just your nervous system gets relaxed. You don't get exhausted like you did before. You can work so many more hours because you're in a smooth space. You quantum leap the results that you want. You're almost bending time because the time happens so much quicker when you're in that spiritual divine space too, because you're being authentic to yourself. You're not spending time in your back of your head saying all these bad things about people like that's
Yeah.
why I'm not doing good, or whatever you want to say. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here. And if you want another interview because of the clunkiness, we will do it again. But what I look at how you experienced this conversation with everybody. You have the perfect next interview and how you want to pivot. And why I'm saying that in front of everybody is because remember this, we are all partners together. It doesn't matter if you feel like this is your first time doing something to 20 million times doing something, it's all the same. Because when you're in this space, there is no wrong. It's just that this is the experience. And Elizabeth shared some things that are very vulnerable or didn't know where to go with it because there's so I mean she can see every little detail of what she went through because it's pretty powerful when you start looking at like you're like, oh man, I'm a badass. And some days sometimes you have your bad days, and to keep those people around us are divine because that's where we're gonna quantum leap. So I love hearing the experience of you rediscovering what your success is and how you're discovering that you love yourself because people want to be around you, not the pretend you in the past person.
Right.
Anything else you want to say? Right here, I have your information about how people can connect with you, and I have everything that you gave me at this point. But I want to make sure that I took care of you and anything you wanted to say to finish this off.
Well, I thank you, Rhonda. I think you're a fabulous, amazing woman yourself. My journey now in life is to continue transforming my life into the butterfly but as much to help others. I have such a place in my heart to really want to see other women break free from these limiting beliefs that held me back most of my life. And it can be, you don't have to spend your whole life going through it, right? There are so many more tools now that people can do to break free from them, because I still see so many women living with those voices and those words. So I am so grateful for the opportunity. I hope that anybody listening will take any part of this and start on their journey today of stopping the words they say to themselves and just starting there and transposing them to a positive. That's at least a start in the positive way. So thank you so much for having me, Rhonda. I appreciate you and I appreciate being here.
Fresh Talks Global Vision. Re-listen to this. This is where you're going to just like discover for yourself. Like, first thing is like what Elizabeth said, like being able to listen to your words. And she was talking about silence and probably meditation, but she gave tools throughout, like some of the things that she did. Try some of those tools and connect with Elizabeth, because she will share how she's done this. She's been taking leadership courses and just been powerfully moving forward. Step into it. Find out where your next stages are. And it might be that you want to connect with Elizabeth, because I tell you, after being in this industry for so long, there's just a handful of people that I actually keep in touch with, because you can feel when people are going through their transition and that they're going in a way that's like about heart and love. And sometimes it just feels right to be hanging out with those people that you can say, okay, that person or that person. So just keep your nervous system open and start really feeling where your yes is, and start listening to your intuition. It only gets better. And I keep learning more and more. And if you'd have saw me 5 years ago, it'd have been way, way different. And so remember, you can quantum leap, you can move forward. Elizabeth has made such big changes in her life. Use these as examples for where you're at and go from there. Be authentic to everybody. And some people will turn you away and some people will be loving on you. And you'll realize how easy that is, even though you want to cry sometimes, because mindset matters, but the connection with your heart and the divine space. Appreciate you. Love you and have a fabulous day. Thank you. Namaste. Thanks, Elizabeth, for being there with us.
Thank you, Rhonda. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.